welcome to Comprehensive Blending, and I am your instructor, Lori Green. Today is the first of 9 classes, and first class is going to be on basic transitional lighting and lighting contrast. So this class goes along with the lighting class that's in the course. And if you haven't watched that, you might want to watch that first before you watch this, just to make sure that everything here today makes a lot of sense to you, or you watch this and then that, but they do go together. The sketch that we're going to be working on today is the cherries. Although I've done sketches for you, this lesson is not so much about the cherry itself, but the concepts behind the lighting create a realistic cherry. I'm going to take it very slow and very easy, especially with this being the first class. This is a core fundamental class. Without getting and understanding this, it's going to be a little bit more difficult to do some of the later on techniques. So this is a very important class. If you get out your cherry picture, you're going to need 2 of them. You're going to need the light version, and you're going to need the version with many on the page. And it'll look like this. It has many on the page, but this is what we'll be working on today. Art is an illusion, and that illusion is created when you add color to perspective. So we're going to cover a little bit of both in this class. We're going to start with your basic lighting. You have your cherry. Now, in the course manual and in the course video, you already know there are many parts of a sphere. So I'm going to only go over it really quickly here so that you have an understanding of where we're going to go with this. Doing a cherry is not that difficult. It's really not anything more than doing a sphere. The options of what you could do with that cherry are infinitesimal. As I said, let's start with the basic, and that's your basic shading. I've chosen where the light is going to come from, and it's coming from up above. So you're going to mark, and now I do suggest that you use a piece of painter's tape, the blue painter's tape, and put that tape wherever you want that light source to be on the page. I'm going to show you a lot of tricks that you can use to help you along the way. Eventually you will stop doing this, but these are tricks that I still use today when I color and draw. So you're going to choose your area where your light source is going to be, and I've chosen right here. Now I'm going to look at the object. Now it could be the cherry, it could be a building, it could be a flower, whatever is on your page. You really want to plan this out. Even though it was just a cherry a few minutes ago, just a cherry, that's what it looked like. Open space. You're going to locate different areas on this cherry. The first thing you're going to look for is your transitional point, or your terminator line. We talked about this in the lesson in the book. We're going to find the terminator line. Now, sometimes that terminator line in literature, they call it a core shadow. They call it a core shadow, but I like terminator. It sounds cooler. So, well, I didn't make that up. It's called terminator or core shadow, but I like terminator. So we're going to locate this. Now, that is the point where your shadow begins and your light source cuts off. So when we're looking at this, we're going to take this going around. We're looking at a cherry. It's going around. And it still has light. And right about here, that light source is cut. This is your terminator line. So we're going to know that this area over here is going to be darker. You have north and south now. On the north side, up here, they're in the light, you're looking good, you can see things, your brightest light. You're going to have to decide where the highest point, where is the tip of the mountain? And I'm looking on here. The tip of the mountain would be right about here. Now, if I made the tip of the mountain over here, even though this is going to be light and this is going to be light, there is a little bit of a shadow from the stem going over. So this might not be the area. It's giving me a hint. Right here, clear view from your source light right to this area. This is not your highlight. This is your center light. This is going to be your lightest tone. You have your half tones over here. Now, if you're in the book, you know what a half tone is. Your center tone, your terminator line, right about here, you're going to have your reflective shadow, your occlusive shadow, and you have to determine now where your highlight is going to go. And remember, in the other video, it's where your line of vision is. My line of vision would be right about here. So my center light is here, but my highlight is sitting here. My highlight could be down here if I was 6 inches shorter. Wherever that light for me is reflecting off the object. If I move my head and I walk around it, that highlight's going to move. So here is where I decided that highlight was going to be. Now we're going to decide on our shadows. And remember that trick that I told you with the lines from your light source to the ground. That's the distance of your shadow. From the light source to the ground, here's your shadow. And it makes sense, because if you're looking up in the sky, this is almost a 90-degree angle, but it's slightly tilted, maybe 10 degrees. Over to the side, the light would start to travel, and it would travel right in here. All in here is basically being occluded. And when you have it here, from here to here would be all occluded light. Under here, at that, my favorite shadow of them all, the occlusive shadow, you have your darkest point. These terms are going to go through your head every video, every object. You no longer can look at things without understanding. You have to put in a cast shadow. You have to know beforehand where these things are before you even put your pencil on. And now we're going to start doing our prep. My husband and I both have tattoos, and they were done by a very famous artist, Anil Gupta, one of the best tattoo artists around. He's out of New York City, and he did both of our tattoos. And when he's one of the best artists that I personally know. When we went in for our consultations, he is a friend of ours, and we went in for a consultation with him to get these tattoos. He did my husband's Noah's Ark first. Not only did he have reference pictures, but we had books that he took different animals from. He didn't just sit there and say, okay, sit down and he was doing art on our bodies. There was no room to screw up. He had a file of pictures that he was going to use as reference pictures. It is the same with you. Every single artist has to do prep. And I very rarely see anybody that shows their prep pictures, like they'll show off their final work. Nobody, including the artists on YouTube, show you what goes into creating that one piece. We're going to do prep on this cherry. To make this easy, I've picked out 2 of our cards. Now, we're going to be working out of cherries 2, and we're going to get out sand. Okay, we're also going to be using cherry leaf, but I don't think I'm going to get to the leaf today because I'm going to be doing leaves in my next, not my next, but down the line we're going to be doing leaves. So these are the 3 that I've chosen for my cherry. So cherry 2 sand, that's analogous, 32, and cherry leaf. And I've picked my pencils. Because we're using one from the book, you know these pencils go together. Okay? I've already done that video on the analogous color and how to use them and how to pick them. So we have an analogous color scheme in the reds. We're using the red yellows. And I've picked my supplemental pencil as eggshell. Not eggshell. Yeah, it's supposed to be sand, but I didn't pull the right pencil. I will when I need it. Actually, eggshell and sand can be interchanged. They're analogous of each other. So maybe I will use eggshell instead of sand because it's lighter. Now I want to do prep on my cherry. I'm going to use this cherry for this first example because we're going to play with the colors in a little while after I finish this. First thing we're going to do is we're going to do the grayscale. We're going to figure out our grayscale. And yes, I've already done a lot of your grayscale in here in the book, but you still have to do your grayscale. You have to scale your colors. So I'm looking at my colors and I'm going to go figure out which is my darkest to my lightest. And obviously these not in order. I did that on purpose right now. That's my palette. Now I want to pick out the shades. Obviously, this is there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is my 1. This is my 5. My mid-tone color is going to be right here. Actually, this would have been fine if I had just switched those colors. So my mid-tone, actually my mid-tone is, these are analogous, so they're very close. This is Poppy. And here we have Permanent. Permanent is lighter, so yeah. Pink, the processed red, this and this are together. This is a little lighter, so I would put it here. So my color is going to go, my grayscale is going to go here, then my process, permanent, Poppy, and Tuscan. Now, as you could see, there's a huge contrast difference between here and here. That's good. These two make the grade. My contrast between here and here is good. My pink to my Poppy, it's okay. So I'm going to leave these colors. If I had too many midtones in here, the colors between my lightest and darkest, I would get rid of one of the colors. Now here's a trick that I use. If you don't have rubber bands of different colors, you can use tape or a piece of paper wrapped around it and taped on. When you're in the groove and going, you really want to know for sure. So I've always used these rubber bands. I bought a pack like 5 years ago and I'm still using them. Here's my darkest color. I always use blue as my darkest. I'm used to picking it up. And I know I don't color in front of you with my rubber bands, but they're always there. behind the scenes. So I've got my darkest, my lightest I could tell. Now I want to grab my midtone. My midterm color is Poppy. So I put my red on Poppy. Now why am I doing this? Because sometimes these colors are so close together that you kind of can get lost. And I know this sounds like a trivial thing, but this has saved my pictures in the past. Just in the middle of it, you have this blank and you go, what was my midtone? What was my, and then you begin to lose it. So I know this is my midtone, this is my lightest, this is my darkest, and then I just have these two. The next pencil I'm going to put on here, rubber band, I'm going to put a yellow one on because this is going to be my midtone between my midtones. This is going to be my halftone. And because this is cream, I don't have to have another color on there. Okay? So now I have an easy time picking up my colors. That's done. My pencils are finished. My gray tone, I've already done my gray tone, or my tonal value, my value scale. Very important, do not skip your value scale. And now I'm ready to say, what am I going to do with my picture? I'm going to demonstrate a cherry, putting all these parts together. I don't have to talk through this. I'm going to put you on hyperlapse because we're going to not only take this cherry and do it just the plain old cherry, but we're going to put this cherry on steroids and see what happens. We're going to take a gun and blast this cherry through. So we have a lot more to do. So I'm going to do this one really quickly. This is following along, putting all my colors into the different areas. So now you're thinking to yourself, Lori, that doesn't really look very cherryish. That's your bottom layer. Now watch what happens when I get my upper layers on and the tones start to meld into each other. I have my basic cherry now. I've got all the parts in the right places. I have my center light over here. I have my half tones going up and over onto this side. I have my reflective shadow, and I've got my terminator line. So I want to add in some tone. I want to stretch that I want to stretch this out. Now, you know that I told you before you can use you can use 100 boxes, but you want to get your lightest to darkest in a very long stretched out. This is how you do it. You add in your black, whites, and grays. This is a dark color. Adding my light grays is not really going to do it well. So I'm making the decision to start with the 70% cool gray. You could start with 50. Anything lower than that's really not going to show up on something this dark. Here with a very sharp pencil, if you go in and you add the little tiny details, pencil must be sharp, you're going to get a much better level of realism. I'm almost sorry I put this, not even almost, I'm sorry I put this on my demo page. I was scribbling on this side, drawing a real picture on this side. I probably would have liked to have taken this to a more photo level. But there's always more. That's why you make copies. I'm almost done with the cherry. I'm at the point where I want to make sure that everything is burnished and that my shadows are exactly where I want them to be. This would be the point where I have my whole entire picture done. This only being the cherry, we're at that point. I've already taken my white and I've done the highlight. The highlight is your perspective, where you are in relationship to this cherry. So I'm standing right here. I'm looking at this cherry. I put my highlight going around here. This is a reflection of the light in the room. It's not my center light. Where the light hits it, you can have a reflection in a darker area. And sometimes it looks really nice because it really shines out. So I put my highlight in right here. And highlights are always in white, where your center light, the light that's coming in the brightest, is the color of the object. So they're two different things. And I put a little one over here. And my object is taking on a little bit of a sheen. Cherries aren't, unless they're wet, they're not overly shiny. They're not like glass shiny. So this is enough of a highlight for what I want to do. The starker your white, the harder your white, the shinier it is. Now, I don't want to destroy all my details because I have a lot of details in this picture. I'm going to take another color. Now, this isn't in your book. This isn't... When I gave you those cards, you're supposed to add colors to it as you need them. Now, I've picked out sepia, which is not sharp. The one color I haven't added to this yet is black. The reason I haven't added the black is black flattens. Once you add black, you sort of take away from the picture a little. You don't add black really until the very end. So sepia is black mixed with brown, so it's not black. And I'm making sure in these areas my tonal value is getting really stretched towards that end mark, towards the black. I chose the brown because it goes really good with red. It blends beautifully with red. So it also, this is, sepia is on the yellower side of brown. So I used the yellow reds on your list. I used the yellower reds when I was doing the reds, so I knew that the sepia would mix right in. It goes in the same way. And I'm just making sure all my shadows are where I want them to be. My tonal value is stretched to the max. I have from white to black or close to black. My edges are darkened, but not stark black. You want to make it round. Your intermediate students, you should be able to blend a sphere. You want it to look very round. And I also added some back highlights back here because the light, not only would it hit the center, but this is also part of the center, up and around it at the top, because my light is hitting it directly. Now, in this area here, where the cherry goes down for the stem, remember the stem, we talked about it, it's in the chapter on lines. This is a hard line because it's actually two different objects. Because I've gone in there really dark, it's appropriate for me to use the black and just make sure that stem has a hard line on it. Now we're going to do branches and stuff like that later on, and I'll show you tricks with this. The cherry stem happens to be smooth. I made it a little bumpier than a natural cherry would be. And it's really helpful, and this is just a recommendation, to know the anatomy. Just like the anatomy of the human body, whatever you're doing, know the anatomy of the object that you're doing. Now I'm taking my black, and remember we talked about the occlusive shadow? I'm going to make sure my occlusive shadow is there. Right where it goes. Remember to use that where your lines are. You know the darkest area is the area where the object hits the ground and no light is admitted to it. So right down here, I have my occlusive shadow with the black. Very little black in there. I put black in here to separate my objects, my hard line. Then I'm going to take my electric eraser, which seems to have walked away, but I cleaned up the very edge of this so that my edges where this object and this object, it's a hard line here. So you have to remember to keep that hard line as clean as possible, and I cleaned it up. Now when I go to do the other cherry, it's going to look like this is actually standing up in front of this cherry because that line is so clean. So that's as far as I'm going to take this cherry because we have a lot more to do. We're going to start abusing the cherry. And we're hitting the half-hour mark on this video, so I'm going to put it in a part 2, and I'm going to upload them both together. So I will see you in part 2, where we're going to do some illusions on this, well, illusions on cherries to make it look a little bit different.